Happy Mother's Day. Today we are in the third week of a spring series that is based on our 7 pathways of becoming. And I wanted to stay with our series today, and I think you'll see how it relates to mothers and Mother's Day. But the series is based on the model. How many of you are familiar with the word of the term a chakra? Yeah, I think pretty much everybody. The Hindu sacred text, the Vedas, is the first place that that term was found. Interestingly enough, in the Bible, in the book of Revelation, chakras means 7 centers of consciousness, or ways that we embody spiritual characteristics. It's just a model for understanding this. In the book of Revelation, there are 7 churches, or 7 spiritual churches, spiritual centers or churches that are aligned with these 7. And so we've been unlocking each one of these to find the gift. And today, what we talk about as we reach our 3rd chakra is our personal power center. How many of you did your mother help you discover your own power in one way or another? Did anybody else's mother say, just put your big girl panties on and go get it done? Probably not to you guys, but that learning to discover what we're made of on the inside. And interestingly enough, this morning I was thinking about Reverend Chad. Someone told me that he had a birthday either yesterday or the day before, and someone walked up to me this morning and put a little slip in my hand and said, I often used to give these to Reverend Chad, and I'm handing this to you today. So I have a feeling that Reverend Chad is here and would like to share this with you. It says, a perfect marriage is just 2 imperfect people who refuse to give up on each other. Doesn't that sound like Reverend Chad? Well, to me, that sets the stage perfectly for what we're talking about today when we talk about our personal power and how it relates to our will, to the individual will. There's a story that is told about a tribe of children, a village, where the children all understood their future and how to fulfill their individual destiny. How many of you have ever had a question and would love to have known more about your future? How many of you would really like to know how to fulfill your individual destiny? Well, this particular village, that's what they taught the children, and so they had a tradition. What they would do whenever a young boy and young girl reached a certain age in their mid-teens, they would climb up the mountain to go see the village sage. And they would sit before the sage, and the sage would look into their eyes and hold their hands and would tell them something about their future. And so on this particular day, a young girl climbed up, and it was her time, and she sat down with the sage. The sage held her hands, looked into her eyes for what seemed like eternity. The young girl, of course, was very anxious to hear and also very nervous. And the young sage said, your future is uncertain. Your future is also very interesting. Your future holds infinite possibility. And in your future, there are many, many skills and many, many qualities and many, many treasures to be discovered, developed, and shared. And the sage went on to say that your future requires you to master 2 things. And he wrote down 2 things, and he placed one in her left hand and one in the right hand, and said, as you master these 2 things, and as the 2 become one, you will have fulfilled your destiny and lived the life of your dreams. So go and do this. Well, what the people did not know was that the village sage told everybody the same thing. Because think about it. The universe says to you, your future is uncertain. Your future is very interesting. Your future holds infinite possibility. And in your future, there are many, many skills and many qualities and many treasures to be discovered, developed, and shared. And your future also requires these 2 things. These 2 things are to master free will and spiritual power. Free will is to understand your true nature and who you really are in this world. Your spiritual power is to understand your true nature and who you are in this world as comprehending yourself connected to a part of Source, a part of all that is. And when you put free will and spiritual power together, you have willpower. You have authentic willpower. And so our individual power, what it means to really be connected with your own power, takes place in our life, and it's demonstrated throughout every area of our life. Interestingly enough, the third church that is associated with personal power is the Church of Pergamos. And the Church of Pergamos in the book of Revelations, what they were challenged with was the two-edged sword. The two-edged sword also is called the place, they refer to it as the throne of Satan. It has the throne of Satan. Well, the two-edged sword is the sword of good and evil. The two-edged sword is where we realize that we have one power that can be used for purposes of good or evil. And then that which we call Satan, or the adversary, is really when we are directing our power, or power is being directed for purposes of evil or purposes that are not of good. That evil in and of itself is not its own power. I love to use the analogy of two rooms. If you have two rooms side by side, and one room is filled complete with light, and one room is completely dark, and they have a pocket door in between. If you open the pocket door, what happens? The light spills over and illuminates the darkness. The opposite does not happen. The darkness does not spill over into the light. That light is light. Light is life. It illumines, and we can only experience the absence of that light. And so power is power, just like electricity. It can be used to illuminate this building or to burn down this building. And so here we enter, as we started by talking about I am and knowing who we are. Last couple of weeks ago, we talked about our desires and our passion. But it's really important that our desires and our passions be linked with our will. And as we move up, we'll realize that it all needs to be linked with love and wisdom. Otherwise, we're willing ourselves to accomplish some things that may be destructive rather than constructive. So the Church of Pergamos is about realizing that we all have this two-sided sword that we wield in our life, and learning how to use and to master our own power. And so what tends to happen is when a person begins to realize that they have a will and can use it, their life begins to change. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, when he talked about the will, he said the will is the executive power of being. That our will gives us our power. There is no personal power without free will. Aleister Crowley said, in the absence of willpower, the most complete collection of virtues and talents is wholly worthless. That will is that within us which sets things into motion. If you think about it, how often do we say things like, they really had a will to live, or a will to survive, a will to win? We say, they had goodwill, or oh, that was ill will. We say things like, oh, they lost their will. We never want to break a child's will completely. We want to help temper it. And we say people find their will. In the life of Jesus, in some of the last words that he expressed when he was beginning to face the end of his life, he prayed, Father, let this bitter cup pass from me. I don't want this to happen, but not my will, but thy will. And so today we're going to look at that to understand what are these degrees of will that we may say, not my will, but this cosmic will. If it's really all a part of us, how do we connect with all of that? The first way is to just simply begin to realize that we all have free will and spiritual power. In my first ministry in Lawrence, Kansas, one Sunday, the church was pretty full, and one of the grandmothers brought her grandson. And he was a pretty rambunctious, I guess maybe 3-4-year-old. And he kept standing up in the seat. And not only was he standing, he was doing things like 3- and 4-year-olds do. And the people behind him couldn't see, and the grandmother was trying to get him to sit down. And finally he said out loud, Grandma, I'll sit down on the outside, but I'm standing up on the inside. I thought, what a beautiful demonstration of will, that you may make me sit down, but I'm standing up on the inside. He was already connected to that part of him that realized, I have the power to decide what I'm going to do. And even though you may make me sit down, I can stand up on the inside. So to realize that we all have a will. And just like with this little boy, our will grow and develop. It's necessary that our will grow and develop. And you'll see that it can grow and develop. There's a beautiful story that I love. It's called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters by Portia Nelson. It goes like this. Chapter 1. I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. It isn't my fault, and it still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's now a habit. But my eyes are open. I know where I am. I know it's my fault, and I get out a lot quicker. Chapter 4. I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5. I walk down another street. I love that because it reminds me that our will is always guiding us and directing us. What street are we walking down? What holes are we falling in? What choices are we make? That we all have our will. And so it's important to know then that our will can develop, it can strengthen, it can grow. And how does this take place? Would you show me the first slide? Have any of you seen, if you go to YouTube and key in the marshmallow test, you'll see this. It's absolutely delightful. Stanford University in the 1960s, a psychologist by the name of Walter Mischel did a test that is known as the marshmallow experiment. What they did, they offered 4-year-olds, they took them into a room and they offered 4-year-olds a marshmallow. And they said, here's a marshmallow. You can eat it now, or if you wait just a few minutes, I'll come back and I'll bring you 2. But if you eat it now, you won't have 2. So if you eat it now, you just get 1. If you wait a few minutes, you'll have 2. And they went out. And then they watched what the children did. Let me show you a few pictures. Here's one little boy right after they walk out, and then the next one. Over a period of minutes. And then the next one. If you can see the grimace on his face. And then finally, this little boy begins to lick the marshmallow. He licks it and puts it down. He licks it and puts it down. That's the last one I have. It's hilarious, the things that they do. Some of them eat it immediately. Some of them talk to it. My favorite one is the little boy who gets up and crawls under the table so he can't even see it. That's my strategy. Just distance yourself from it. Don't be tempted. But the interesting thing that they discovered with these children, the purpose of the test was to follow them. They followed these children from a number of years. There's actually a book that's titled Willpower that is based on this study and the incredible findings. They said he offered 4-year-olds the choice of a marshmallow now or 2 if they could wait 15 minutes. He and the other researchers then tracked the performance of these children until they became adults. They found that the children who resisted the temptation, what they called high delayers, as opposed to instant gratificationers. Because we all know we like instant gratification, and we have a culture of instant gratification, unfortunately at the expense of our environment and a lot of different things. It's not natural always. So the children who had the capacity to resist and what they called high delayers, overall they had greater academic success, better health, more overall wealth and success, and lower rates of marital separation and divorce. They concluded that the ability to delay gratification constituted a protective buffer against the development of all kinds of vulnerabilities later in life. As a matter of fact, of repeat offenders who have been incarcerated, one of the number one things that they find is an inability to delay gratification. And so it's something that we can all learn. The study also reported things such as our willpower at one level of our being can be really worn down. For example, they did a study. They sent a bunch of people into a movie theater. Some of the people, they put beside them cookies and popcorn, but said, "Don't eat it." That's just mean. So they had to watch the whole movie with it beside them and didn't eat it. Half the other people, they didn't tell them anything. They just said, "Go watch the movie." After the movie, they immediately took all of the people and initiated a second test where they needed to focus on something. The people that had to resist the popcorn and the cookies performed much, much lower than the others. They also tested people all around the country. For example, Israeli judges. People would come before them and they would issue parole. As it got closer to lunchtime, the judges gave almost no parole. Right after lunch, they gave the highest number of parole. So a hint to the wise is sufficient. If anybody needs to go see a judge, go after lunch. But what they realize is that a level of our being is actually linked to our glucose levels, that our capacity to have fortitude and will can be worn down. And discovering and learning and mastering that willpower is a part of opening ourselves to a greater level of ourselves. Because we reach a point, there's a scripture that says, "Not by might, nor by power, but by my Spirit." You see, we have to develop our will as best we can in order to be able to transcend and allow a higher level of will. This is where personal will and spiritual power begin to work together. And so the way that we do that is to think about when we're engaging our will. When you think of something that requires willpower for you, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most people, it's to resist temptation. In another subsequent one of these studies, they realized that the average person, over 4 hours of our waking time is spent resisting temptation. Things such as trying not to eat too much, trying to stay focused at work. We're wanting to be somewhere else, that a lot of times we're wanting to do something else other than what we're doing. And so it keeps us in a state of resistance, that it takes a whole lot of energy. And so the way that we begin to transcend this is to really start asking ourselves and probing into our will. There's a great quote by Oscar Wilde that says, "I can resist anything except temptation." And it's probably true for a lot of us. It's like, yeah, I can resist anything except temptation. And so we learn to develop our will. But learning to strengthen our will, it means self-regulation, self-control to a certain extent, but not trying to control our environment. It's more about controlling our thoughts, controlling why we want to do the things we want to do. There was a great story in Reader's Digest that a woman wrote in who had been a smoker. And she said that when she quit smoking, she thought her husband should quit smoking. Well, her husband had different ideas about that. So she set her will to do everything she could to get him to stop smoking. Every time he'd light up a cigarette and smoke, she'd say, "Honey, you're killing me." He'd light up a cigarette. "Honey, you're killing me and the children. Honey, you're killing me and the children and the dog. Honey, you're killing me and the children and the dog and the drapes. You're just killing." She just went on and on and on. Until one day, this Reader Digest story said he made a cocktail and sit down, and now he had a drink and a cocktail, and she said, "Smoke, smoke, smoke. Now you're drinking. What are you doing?" He said, "If you don't stop trying to impose your will on me, I'll soon start dating again also." that our relationship's going to end if you keep trying to impose your will on me. And sometimes that's a part of the will, the growth process, that when we begin to learn with our own will, we think that we want to impose our consciousness and our will on other people. Can anybody think of someone that has tried to impose their consciousness and their will on you? Can anybody think of someone that would say you've done that to them? That it's part of our human nature, so learning to be mindful about our will. So the way is to take it even deeper. It's beyond the wills and the wants, what I will do and what I will not do. Willpower is learning to focus our strength and energy to direct our lives. Willpower is how we follow through, how we keep faith when we falter, how we persevere when it's not easy, how we hold on to the bigger picture and the ultimate goal. Willpower is how we move beyond our fears, our limitations, and our stuck places. Willpower is how we develop the seeds of our potential and harvest the fruits of our spirit. You see, beyond the I will and I won't, I will and I will not, is what do I really want? W-A-N-T. Because the will's primary goal is to keep you connected to your deeper motivations, the deeper intentions. Unless our will and our desires are really rooted together, then we're at war within ourselves. And as these studies show, so many of us are in war with a big part of ourselves throughout our day. Several years ago, in my first ministry, I had a woman that came in. She was a mother of 3. She had a child in high school, one in college, and one who had just graduated college. She was a single mom, had worked really hard, 2 jobs, did everything that she felt like she could possibly do to see that her children were successful. But as they were now, teens and in their 20s, there was a lot of animosity. And she was controlling, she was over-controlling. And she was unconsciously undermining their success, and they had a lot of resentment, but she really couldn't see it. And so as we began to work together a little bit and talk about it, what she said was, I want my children to know that I was right some of the time. And what she realized was she almost wanted them to know that she was right more than she wanted them to succeed. And as a mom, she felt terrible about it when it came to the surface and she realized it. She had tried very hard and made mistakes along the way, and she wanted them to say, Mom, you're okay. We know you did your best, that you did the best you could. And so when she finally, it's like something in her cracked open, and she realized that she had been trying to control them, that her will had been at war. And so when I asked her, I said, well, what do you want for them more than anything? And she said, well, that's easy. I want for them to be successful. I want for them to know the expressions of God that they are. I want for them to fulfill their heart's desires. And as she began to connect with that deep intention, that deep W-A-N-T want, her relationship with all 3 children changed. Because now she could relax a bit, rather than caught up in, I will do this and I won't do this. I want you to do this. I don't want you to do that. She was connected with, what do I want above all things? I really want you to succeed. I want you to love and to know that you are loved. And it allowed her to grow and their relationships to grow. That's the level of will that we're all being called into. Would you give me that last song, Richard? When Jesus said, let this bitter cup pass from me, it shows how in all of our lives there are times and things that we face when we say, I don't want to do this. It may be as simple as, I do not want to get up and go to the gym, but I do want to have help. Or it may be something that says, I do not want to leave this relationship, but I know that I need to. Whatever the wills and the wants, just like he said, I don't want to do this. But he was connected with something much deeper, because he didn't stop there. He said, but not my will, but thy will. You see, thy will is the greater will. It's the cosmic will. It's the union of free will and spiritual power. It's when I can say, I can apply for the job here and put my whole heart in it and say, I want this. I want to be here. I know this. But above all, what I really want more than anything is what's for my highest and best and what's for your highest and best. That's how couples can say that in relationship. It's another level of being to say, what I want above all, the greatest desire that I have, is to fulfill my soul's purpose. That's where our soul is leading us, and that's where every I will and every I will not will be tested, will be tried, will be shaken, to lead you to a level to say, what is the true intention? What is the deeper desire behind the will? Would you give me that last quote? Paramahansa Yogananda to me said this beautifully when he said, Every morning I offer my body, my mind, and any abilities that I possess to be used by Thee, O infinite Creator, in whatever way Thou dost choose to express Thyself through me. I know that all work is Thy work, and that no task is too difficult or too menial when offered to Thee in loving service. This week, as we reflect on our personal power and our will, I invite us to bring a level of awareness to when we're having I will and I won't. What is the W-A-N-T, the want, behind it? What is the deeper intention and the deeper desire? And is that flowing from your soul, or is it flowing from pride? Is it flowing from your soul, or is it flowing from the ego's desire to be safe and to be right? And without judgment, to just keep taking ourselves back until we can reach that place, because within all people, there is that place that says, above all, I want to be free, I want to be love, I want to be what I've created to be. And as we connect with that, it infuses every layer of will in our life. So the song that we've chosen today simply says, Thy will is my will. Thy will is done through me this day. 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 Once again, Thy will